You can sit down, Kayla. We're not discussing this again. Dad didn't even look at me. He just kept flipping through that damn folder in front of him like it contained something more important than his own daughter. Mom stood by the window, arms folded, nodding at every cold word he spat. My palms were sweating, but I didn't move. Dad, I said. My voice cracked. I'm your daughter. Grandma raised me like her own. She made that clear every year on my birthday, in every letter, every call. He finally looked up. You're not my daughter, he said calmly, like he was telling me what the weather was like outside. We only allowed you to stay here because Mom insisted. And then she added it, softly, but enough to slice through the room like a blade. Only blood relatives deserve the family fortune, Kayla. I just stared at them. My chest tightened like someone had wrapped barbed wire around it. Then I asked the only thing I could, my voice steadier than I expected. Will you still feel the same after tomorrow? They didn't even hesitate. Dad shrugged.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change that. Mom didn't even blink. He had no idea what was coming. Because tomorrow wasn't just another day. Tomorrow was the reading of Grandma's will. And for the past 5 years, I'd been keeping a secret so deep, so carefully buried behind silence and humility, they never even bothered to ask what I was really doing with my life. That secret? It was going to change everything. Let me back you up for a second, not with some slow background or sob story, but with a moment. Just one. 4 years ago, when I was 19, I stood outside a courtroom after testifying against the man who tried to hurt Grandma. Everyone in my family had refused to go. They said it was a waste of energy, and she's not going to live much longer anyway. So I sat beside her, held her hand, and listened to her whisper something no one else had ever heard. You'll be the one I trust, Kayla. Not because you're blood, but because you're heart. I never forgot that. And over the next few years, I built a life no one saw coming. By day, I stacked boxes at a bookstore to pay rent. By night, I ran a consulting business under a different name, quiet, faceless, but powerful. By 23, I had clients from Europe to Singapore. By 24, I had enough money to do something bigger, something that would prove that love, loyalty, and integrity were worth more than blood ties.
But back to that day.
The day before everything came crashing down for them. Mom and Dad had already started gloating. Just make sure you dress respectfully tomorrow, Mom said over her shoulder. The lawyers will be there. The press might show up too. For what? I asked with a half smile. You expecting a royal coronation?
She scoffed.
We're inheriting $10 million, Kayla. This isn't a garage sale. I wanted to laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so blind. So arrogant. Dad muttered something under his breath about real family and legacy, and I just stood there like a statue. They thought I was the one getting left behind. But the truth? They'd already lost.
They just didn't know it yet.
That night, I sat alone in my apartment. Tiny.
Cold.
No TV. One lamp. A cheap couch. But that room had seen every tear, every plan. Every night I stayed up building my empire. I opened the locked drawer in my desk. Pulled out the envelope. It was yellowed from time, but pristine inside. Grandma's handwriting. Elegant, sharp, and unmistakably hers. She'd given it to me in the hospital just months before she passed. Said it was for me only, and not to open it until the will was read. I stared at it now like it was a live grenade. Because tomorrow, that letter was going to explode in their faces. And I wasn't going to flinch. The will reading was held in a sleek, stone-walled office downtown. The type of place where silence felt expensive. Mahogany desks. Frosted glass doors. A receptionist who didn't smile. I walked in wearing the same black coat I'd worn to Grandma's funeral. Nothing fancy. Just simple. Quiet. Dad wore his Rolex. Mom wore fake pearls, but pretended they were real. And sitting at the head of the table was Mr. Hammond, the estate lawyer.
Tall. Stern.
No nonsense. Everyone else was already seated, my uncle, my aunt, their bratty son who once set my homework on fire and called it a prank. All of them looked at me like I was some charity case who'd snuck into a gala. Kayla, Uncle Martin said with a fake smile. Didn't expect to see you here. I gave him a tight smile back. Funny. Grandma invited me. Silence. Mr. Hammond cleared his throat. We're here for the formal reading of Edith Langford's last will and testament, he began. Before we begin, Miss Kayla, your grandmother requested you read a letter she left specifically for you. Out loud. In this room. My dad blinked. What letter? But I was already pulling it from my coat pocket. Hands trembling, but voice steady, I opened the envelope and read. My dearest Kayla, if they're already looking at you like you don't belong, let them. This room isn't filled with family, it's filled with people who came for fortune. But you, my child, were the only one who ever sat beside me when I was broken, when I was weak, when I couldn't breathe. They called you not blood, but I called you home. You showed me what love without expectation looks like. And so I'm showing you what faith looks like. They expected a fortune. They won't get it. Because I'm giving everything to the one who showed me what real wealth means. It's all yours, Kayla. The business, the houses, the bank accounts, the legacy. I know you'll use it not to hurt them, but to heal what they chose to break. Make me proud. With all my love, Grandma. The silence in that room wasn't silent at all. It was thunder in disguise. My father's hands clenched. Mom's jaw dropped. Uncle Martin actually laughed, then realized it wasn't a joke. And Mr. Hammond? He pulled out a second folder, one with my name embossed in gold. Effective immediately, he said, eyes scanning the room. Kayla Langford is the sole beneficiary of Edith Langford's estate. That includes the 3 properties in Aspen, Napa, and Maine. The stocks, totaling just over $8 million. The Langford Publishing House. And the remainder of her holdings, which together amount to a final estate value of $12.7 million. He looked at my father. And, to answer your question, yes. She verified Kayla's right to inheritance through legal guardianship and explicit instructions. There is no ambiguity. I didn't look at them. I just stood, nodded politely to Mr. Hammond, and turned to leave. But right before I reached the door, I paused, turned, and said quietly, You were right, Dad. I'm not your real daughter, but I am the real legacy. You can't do this. Dad's voice cracked behind me as I turned to leave. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because I didn't need to. Letting silence hum between us was louder than any speech I could give. But then I heard it. Mom's voice, shrill, brittle with panic. We raised you. We fed you, clothed you, gave you a roof. I turned back, my fingers still on the sleek chrome door handle. You made sure I always knew I didn't belong, I replied quietly. And now, you finally got your wish. I stepped into the hallway of the law firm, heart racing, but not from fear. From the surreal weight of what had just happened. $12.7 million, the publishing house, 3 homes, an empire that spanned decades, a name built on resilience, ink, and late nights. It was all mine. But it wasn't about the money. It never had been. This was about something far deeper, far older, far more personal. This was about being silenced for years. Told I wasn't enough. That I was second. That I was lucky to even have a seat at the table. Now, I owned the whole damn table. As I walked out of the building, the cold air hit me like a baptism. Crisp. Real. Electric. I pulled out my phone and made a single call. Gabriel, it's time. A pause on the other end. Then, you want the papers drafted? I took a slow breath. Send the transfer order for the board change. Effective immediately. I want full executive control. And Gabriel, prepare the press release. The one titled, Granddaughter Steps in to Reshape Langford Legacy. No. I smiled, watching my reflection in the glass of a passing car. Title it, Estranged Heiress Breaks Silence and Inherits Everything. Back at home. Well, back at the apartment that had seen more struggle than success. I didn't even sit down. I started packing. I wouldn't need that space anymore. I wouldn't need the cracked mirror in the bathroom, or the flickering stove, or the leaky window that let winter whisper through my nights. This place had been a cocoon. Now it was time to fly. Still, I couldn't help one final glance before I left. I walked to the wall, where an old photo of Grandma and I hung, slightly tilted, edges worn. She was holding my hand. I was maybe 8, missing a front tooth, beaming like the sun. I pressed my fingers to the glass. "Thank you," I whispered. Then I left. The next 48 hours moved like thunder. The moment the news broke, everything ignited. My phone didn't stop ringing. Reporters, board members, distant relatives who once laughed at me during Christmas dinners and now suddenly wanted to catch up. But most shockingly, Dad showed up at my new office. Uninvited. I was sitting in Grandma's old chair, now mine, when my assistant buzzed in. "There's a man here. Says he's your father. Won't leave until he speaks to you." I should have said no. But some part of me, maybe curiosity, maybe a thirst for closure, said yes. He walked in like a shell of himself. No arrogance. No Rolex. Just a wrinkled dress shirt and a face pale with disbelief. "You did this." He didn't sit. Just stood there like a man who'd seen a ghost. "No," I said slowly.
She did.
"I just honored her wishes." He tried to laugh. It came out choked. "You think money makes you better than us?" I stood, walked around the desk, stood toe-to-toe with the man who once told me I'd never amount to anything. "No," I whispered, "but kindness does." He blinked. I leaned closer. "And you chose cruelty." I thought that would be the last time I saw him. But pain has a funny way of circling back. A week later, I received a letter. Handwritten. From Mom. I almost threw it away. But something made me open it. "Kayla, I know we weren't good to you. I know we said things that can't be unsaid. But your father's not doing well. He's been drinking. We lost the house. I don't know where to go. I don't expect you to forgive us. But if there's anything left of the girl who used to hug us, please help." I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I picked up my coat and drove. Their house, once grand, full of pride and paintings, was now a shell. The lights were off. The porch creaked under my feet. And when the door opened, I almost didn't recognize Mom. She looked 10 years older. Hair unbrushed. Eyes red. Dad was sitting on the couch, staring at the floor, a bottle in his hand. I didn't say anything, just placed an envelope on the table. Mom picked it up, her hands shaking. Inside, a rental lease. Prepaid. 6 months. A therapist's contact for Dad. And a note. "I can't forget what you did. But I can choose who I am. I'm not like you. So I'm helping, because that's what Grandma would have wanted." I left before they could say anything. Not for applause. Not for gratitude. But because it was the right thing. The next morning, I stood on the rooftop of Langford Publishing's headquarters. The city stretched below me, loud, unforgiving, alive. And I thought of every moment they tried to break me. Every insult. Every time I was told I wasn't enough. And then I whispered to the wind, "You were wrong." Because I was more than enough. I was unstoppable. I didn't hear from them for weeks after I left that envelope. No thank you. No apology. Just silence. But I didn't need it. I had bigger things to do. Grandma's publishing house was mine now, and I planned to rebuild it, not just for legacy, but for people like me who'd been silenced too long. 3 days later, I walked into the boardroom with confidence. The same men who once laughed at me now stood when I entered. "Miss Langford." One of them nodded. "Kayla," I corrected. "Let's get started." I laid out a full restructure. Fair pay, new leadership, fresh talent, and funding for young writers from underprivileged backgrounds. They pushed back. I pushed harder. And by the end of that meeting, they voted yes. Unanimously. That night, I got a message from someone I hadn't heard from in years.
Noah.
My childhood friend. The one person who used to believe in me when no one else did. Saw the news. "You made it, Kay. Proud of you." I smiled. That meant more than the inheritance ever could. But just when I thought things were finally calming down, something unexpected happened. I got a call from the hospital.
My dad had collapsed.
Liver failure. Mom was panicking. I don't know what to do, she sobbed. He's asking for you. I stared at the phone. Then I drove there. Not because I forgave them, but because I refused to let their bitterness define me. In the hospital room, he looked small.
Worn.
He tried to speak, but choked up. I just sat there. No hate. No warmth. Just stillness. I was wrong, he rasped. I nodded once. That was enough. When I left, Mom caught my hand. Why are you helping us? I looked her in the eye. Because I'm not like you, I said. And I never will be. Days turned into weeks, and things started falling into place. Langford Publishing was thriving under my leadership, my vision taking shape. The board, which once doubted me, now praised my decisions. Every challenge felt like fuel for the fire that was burning inside me. I had proven that I wasn't just the girl who didn't belong. I was the woman who owned her destiny. But no matter how much success I found, there was one thing I couldn't escape: the weight of my family's rejection. Dad was in and out of the hospital. Mom called less and less. It wasn't guilt, it was something else. A strange, quiet pride. They knew they'd lost me forever. And for once, I was okay with that. Then, one afternoon, as I was finalizing a new contract, I got a knock on my office door. It was Uncle Martin. He was standing there, looking like he'd just swallowed something bitter. Kayla, he started, voice low. I came to apologize. For everything. We were wrong. All of us. I didn't know what to say. I didn't have the energy for more apologies. You've proven your point, he continued, eyes desperate for forgiveness. Can we at least talk about moving forward? About rebuilding family? I stared at him, his words dangling in the air like smoke. There's no rebuilding with you, I said softly. Not anymore. I don't think he expected that. But I wasn't about to waste any more time explaining myself to people who never truly saw me. The next day, the papers hit. The story of my rise. The headline, Estranged Heiress Takes Over Langford Legacy. And the world watched. I'd shown them all, my father, my mother, my uncle, the world. But what came next wasn't the triumph I thought it would be. One evening, I received a call from the lawyer who handled Grandma's estate. Kayla, he said, there's something you need to see. I walked into his office, where he handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a letter from Grandma. My dear Kayla, I left you more than I could ever explain. Please know that my love for you is what matters most. But there's one more thing you must know before it's too late. I sat there, heart racing, as I read the rest. The truth was in front of me, more shocking than I could have imagined. The letter from Grandma wasn't just a final note, it was a bombshell. My dearest Kayla, I know what you've done. I know how far you've come. But I've left something even more important for you to find. It's time to reclaim what's truly yours. Not just the wealth, not just the name, but the truth. I felt the room close in on me. My hands shook as I read further. She hadn't just left me the estate. She had left me something deeper. Something personal. A final gift that had the power to destroy everything my parents thought they knew. The lawyer watched me carefully as I processed it. Do you want me to help you find it? He asked gently. I nodded. Later that night, I found myself standing in the attic of Grandma's old house. The one my father had sold years ago. The place I had spent summers sitting at her feet, listening to her stories. Now it was just an empty shell. But not everything had been taken. I pulled open a dusty chest and inside, hidden beneath old books and forgotten mementos, I found it, a box. A small wooden box with a lock. My heart raced as I opened it. Inside was a collection of letters, legal documents, and photos. One letter in particular caught my attention. Kayla, my love. I promised you something. This letter is the last piece of the puzzle, the one that connects the dots. Everything your parents have ever told you about your past is a lie. Your real father is not who they told you. Your legacy, your birthright, everything has been kept from you for reasons I'll never forgive.
But I've saved this for you.
Now the choice is yours. You can confront them, or you can take this gift and make it your own. Either way, the power is yours now. I sat there, stunned. The papers in my hands weren't just family secrets. They were a testament to a life I'd never known. My biological father was a man I'd never heard of. And that wasn't all. There was a will from Grandma, stating that she had legally adopted me when I was 5. I wasn't just the granddaughter of Edith Langford. I was her daughter, legally and undeniably. I knew what I had to do. The next day, I sat in my office, holding the documents in front of me. I called my parents, and they came without hesitation. I had the leverage now. The truth. When they entered my office, they weren't expecting me to confront them with the facts. I laid everything out on the table. Here, I said, sliding the papers toward them. I'm not just your daughter, Dad. I'm your heir. And I'm legally your mother's daughter, not just her granddaughter. You thought you could erase me, that I wasn't worth the fight. But now, the only thing left to do is face the consequences. Dad looked at the papers, his face pale, his mouth dry. You have no idea what you've done, he said, but there was no strength in his voice. I have every idea, I said coldly. And I'm not sorry. I stood facing them both. This is where the story ends for you. You never saw me as your family, but I'll never forget what I've learned. This, I gestured to the building, to the life I had built, is what I'm doing with what you abandoned. And just like that, I was done. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't vengeful. I wasn't even sad. I had taken everything they had tried to take from me. I had found my voice. The weeks that followed weren't easy. There were public questions, media scrutiny. But the truth was, I didn't care. The family I had been waiting for was gone, but I had everything I needed to move forward. And I was doing it alone. I was my own legacy now. My own person. As I looked out over the city from my office window, I finally understood what Grandma had been trying to teach me. It's not about blood. It's about love, loyalty,
And strength.
and I had all of that.